Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my 2024 stats wrap up. In 2024, I started sharing a lot of my stats just because people were interested in them and I was doing it quarterly, so this is the final one for the year. It is going to include my December stats and then my end of year stats for everything, and then also how I did in my bingo board from hell. So we're wrapping up quite a few things. This is just purely a stats video. I'm not really going to be talking about specific books in here. At the end, I will do a little bit of a scroll through my spreadsheet so you can see when things were read if you're interested, like if that's something that you care about. I also want to put a disclaimer at the start of this video that if stats are not your thing, or if you purposely come along to stats videos just to have a go at people, this is not the space for that, because all that happens is I delete those comments. If you're someone who is just generally interested in or how people reflect on their reading journey and themselves as readers, then stick around, because I'm going to talk a little bit about, what I've learned about myself as a reader throughout this year and this journey, and the honestly insane number of books that I read. So December was probably my worst reading month, and that's just because it's December, and December is difficult, and particularly when you are traveling during December and you're away for Christmas, it can be really difficult to try and fit things in. I was also very unwell at one point in the month, and that had a huge impact on me being able to do anything, let alone read. So while I wish I probably had got a little bit more reading in, it just wasn't happening in December. So the total books that I read in December were 39. I read a total of 9,106 pages. I had 7 rereads during the month. In terms of the formats that I was reading, I read 10 physical books, I read 21 ebooks, and 8 of those were either audiobooks or immersive reads where I was listening to the book and reading it at the same time. My age categories were not varied at all this month. I had 3 kids books, no middle grade, no young adult, and 36 adult titles. Not a lot of variation at all. And then in terms of the diversity or the representation of books that I read, 26 of the books that I read were queer titles, which makes sense because I was participating in the Queer Lit Readathon. 10 of those books featured BIPOC representation. I didn't have any Australian or Torres Strait Islander rep this month, and I'm devastated by that. That is just something that I have to focus on. I read 10 Australian authors, and 4 of the books that I read featured either chronic illness or disability representation. My most read genre was romance. I read 32 romance books, and my most read subgenres under romance were paranormal romance, of which I read 6, and hockey romance, which I read 6. And in terms of my savings for Kindle Unlimited and Libby, so from Kindle Unlimited with the books that I had out from there, minus my monthly cost, I saved $35.32. Australian, and my savings through using my library particularly for audiobooks was $129.94, which is pretty good.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life. Deep connection lights a spark. It's like you know me.
So then we move into yearly stats. And this is a little bit wild. And I remember at the start of the year, I talked about how for the first time I was including all of my picture book reads in my stats because I wanted to see what the total number of books I read in a year was. That's where this element of wow comes in, because I read 810 books through this year. And that was a total of 157,024 pages. There were 77 rereads through the year. A lot of those were audiobook rereads as well. In terms of the actual specifics for the format breakdown, 403 of the books I read were physical books, 295 were ebooks, 92 were audio or immersive reading experiences. And I think that's really interesting because my primary format is still some kind of physical book, but I think that has to do with the kids' books because I tend to read all of my kids' books in a physical, either paperback or hardback copy. I think I should also mention at this point that my physical and ebook counts and my audiobooks also include any e-arcs or audio arcs or any traditionally published review copy titles. They all fit in that category. When we break down the age categories for the whole year, I have read 214 kids books. Again, that attributes to a lot of the physical books that I read. 67 middle grade titles, 25 young adult titles, so this is still the smallest category that I read any given year, and I'm very, very selective about what I'm reading in the young adult category. And 500 adult titles, which is a beautiful round number. I don't know how I managed that. In terms of representation through these books throughout the year, 219 of the books I read featured queer characters or were written by queer authors. I combined the two. 177 of those were written by BIPOC authors, and this is definitely a number that I can increase. 35 are by Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander authors, again, another number that I need to increase. And 107 featured chronic illness or disability representation. And this year I'm tracking that category a little bit differently. I've broken it up into different sections, so we'll see how my numbers change as I'm tracking things specifically. 377 of the books that I read this year were by Australian authors. My most read genre was romance at 385 books, and my most read subgenre under that category was contemporary romance, which I read 150 titles, paranormal romance, which had 77, and hockey romance, which came in at third at 63 books read. When we talk about my Kindle Unlimited savings for the entire year, so the total savings before I take away the cost of the subscription was $861.96, minus my subscription cost, and it comes down to $694.08, which is a huge number. And then my savings through using Libby and my local library was $1,446.64, which again is a huge amount of money. So those are the stats from my tracking spreadsheet. They're as accurate as I can be. I think I did notice as I was getting towards the end of the year, there were a couple of little tweaks with formulas and things like that that I had to make. So there might be a slight error out of like one or two books here or there, but for the most part, the tracking went really well and I got some really good data out of it. Then we come to the bingo board from hell wrap up. So the bingo board is the brainchild of Lianne from Literary Diversions. I'm doing it again in 2025. I had a great time with it this year. I did have to change and adjust my goals mid-year, which is perfectly fine. Jumping into the final wrap up for this, for my challenge to read 75 audiobooks, I did hit this earlier in the year and I am now sitting at 92 audiobooks read, which is amazing. That is way more audiobooks than I read in 2023. So I'm really getting into the habit of having an audiobook going on the go. So if I'm walking or traveling or just doing chores around the house, I still get reading in. And I'm also finding that I'm reading more diversely through those audiobooks because I'm picking things from my local library, what they have available. So it's not always things that are sitting specifically within my genre preference. I also had the challenge to read 75% of my pre-2024 physical TBR. I'm currently sitting at 80.5%, so I've hit that goal, which is amazing, and that has helped keep the numbers down for the same goal moving forward into 2025. Mid-year, I added in the goal, or I swapped out a goal to include reading 80% of my 2024 physical TBR, so books that I acquired this year. This is currently sitting at 83.5%. This dropped a little bit from last month because a few more books came into my collection. But again, I've hit the goal. I'm feeling successful about that. And again, it also means that going into this year, I don't just have piles and piles of physical books that are unread, which is totally fine for anyone who's happy with that. For me, I like keeping things manageable. My goal to read 50 middle grade books was achieved earlier in the year. I've read 57 for the whole year. The one square that I find really useful is because it's something that I can achieve. It also helps me to be realistic with setting my monthly TBRs, is my read 80% of my set TBR each month. I've managed to hit that every month, whether that's reading or actually DNFing and clearing out books from my collection. It's been really useful to keep myself on track. I had a goal of reading or finishing 18 series, which I did earlier in the year. I just like getting through series. That's one of my favorite things to do. So this is a no-brainer. And the series goal for this year is a little bit more intense than it was initially in 2024. So we shall see how I go with that. I had a goal of reading 20 nonfiction books because nonfiction is definitely not a genre or a category of books that I gravitate towards at any point in time. And I'm so happy that I read 25 of them this year. A lot of them were on audio, which I'm finding is the best way for me to consume them. So I've learned a lot about myself as a reader this year through this challenge, and I think that's great. I also had a challenge to read 2 non-romance books every month. I've hit that. mostly through the non-fiction titles, but also through a few other books that sit in more the contemporary fiction or the sci-fi space, which is awesome. And then the last goal that I had was to read 100% of my rare TBR, the books that I acquired when I went to the event back in 2023. I did manage to hit that, but it wasn't until the second half of the year. But I'm so glad that I did it, because it means that I am accountable for all those books, because I went a little bit wild at rare. I am the first to admit that, and I'm hoping not to do the same thing when I go later this year, when it comes back to Melbourne. I have a few plans for what I want to do so that I'm not necessarily acquiring a lot of physical books. There are still some that I want to collect, but for the most part, I'm thinking about a few other strategies to help me not bring back like over 100 books, because I don't need that. Alrighty, so those are my stats for 2024. They are a little bit wild. And as I said, like, that was part of the goal, was to see cumulative, including all parts of my reading life, how the stats came out. And I think it was really interesting. I'm going to continue to do it this year as well, and to track the picture books in the same way. I just think that I get a lot of really interesting information for myself, because this is where I like numbers and stats, is in my reading. Not so much a fan of it anywhere else, but here I find it really interesting, and looking for patterns and learning about myself as a reader is something that I really enjoy. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you have found this interesting. I'm happy to answer any questions you have down below. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of data emoji that you would like in the comments. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.
What's your weakness? What's your type? Somehow I want